Right.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome. Goat Pod
Hello.
episode, God knows what. I can never remember
Something.
the podcast number. We obviously
Yeah.
got the daily vlog. We're up to like 170.
Yeah,
God
you
knows
guys
what
keeping
number.
up with your content just now.
Oh, I don't know where we are. I don't know what day it is, mate, let
Yeah.
alone anything else. I'm with Jordan Schwarzenberger,
Yeah.
Chief Business Development Officer at YMU. I'm excited about this one because normally it's quite interesting, the podcast. I've traditionally either had super young people on, like I'm talking this Thursday, we've got an 11-year-old on. I'm not sure you've
Amazing.
seen him on LinkedIn, Omari McQueen.
No,
Like
I haven't. Oh, you know, I have.
Like the youngest business owner in the UK,
Yeah.
the vegan restaurant. He's on a Thursday, so and I've had like 13, 14-year-olds like who started their businesses. I'm really interested in that side of things because obviously that's where I came from. And I've also had much older people in the traditional sort of media landscape. And we kind of fit in that middle bit.
Yeah.
I'm 24, you're 21?
22.
22.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think it's a really interesting story for anybody who's in relatively powerful positions or high up positions in traditional media businesses and media businesses in general right now, aged in this bracket where the world has changed whilst we've been living it. And, you know, how are you finding the responsibility of being in the position you're in a huge company whilst, you know, everything's changing around you and you're kind of the guys, you're the person with the eyes?
I mean, yeah, I think it's an experience for sure. I think that's always almost been where I've sat within whatever business I've been in, whether that was kind of Vice at 17 or Lab Bible, I think at 18, and then start my own company, you know, and then working with all the clients there. It's always been around, you know, how can I use my insight around being, you know, 17 to 20 in this industry, having worked with brands, having had experiences that, you know, might have taken longer typically to kind of get, and how can I use that insight to help future-proof was my sort of phrase, whether that was future-proof in helping to future-proof Lab Bible and driving their social sort of content and world, or whether that was advice, whether that's at YMU and James Grant. Now I think it's always been around that sense of future-proofing, and I think it comes with challenges naturally, as it always would, but I think it's the best thing is when you're surrounded by people, and this is what I'm really lucky to be in at YMU and formerly James Grant, is to be around people who understand that they need young people in the room, and they need to bring in insight and a kind of cultural understanding that isn't the same as the people sitting next to them. You know, that there is a need for that. And what was amazing is finding partners in you know, Mary Beckett, who's now the UK CEO of YMU, and Neil Rodford, who's the global CEO of YMU. Finding partners in those guys who really understood that was amazing, and it's been the biggest kind of growth period of my life from a career perspective, in so many ways, because they've taken me on under their wing and said, right, how can you use your, you know, cultural insight and understanding and knowledge of the space which I've grown up in, to help future-proof the business and support the clients, which is, it's been amazing. It's been a really cool thing.
And I'd like to go right the way back because I'm really interested in the story. Like, not every 17, 18-year-old gets to work in the companies that you did, and not many 22-year-olds go and, you know, be in the position you're in at a company like YMU.
Yeah.
So let's rewind right the way back. Like, what started your interest in social, and what got you into Vice at 17?
Well, it's kind of funny. So, yeah, I mean, I was 17. I was at King Alfred School in North London, and I was studying for my politics A-level at the time, and I was super bored, and I was meant to be revising, and there was something about, for me, the idea of uni that was just not clicking. And I'd done my personal statement. I was meant to be revising. I was, you know, I'd gone through the process. I had my offers. Days of personal statements.
Oh, I remember those days.
Oh yeah, so it was around that time, and I just remember sitting in that room in the school and just being like, I can't go to uni. Like, this cannot be for me. And so I thought, all right, what businesses out there, you know, have their kind of heart plugged into the culture? What businesses are doing really cool stuff? And the one company that I could think of, this is before I knew anything about the industry or about the world of brands, the world of social, really. It was more just what companies are doing amazing stuff. And I thought Vice, of all the companies at the time, this must have been like 2014, 15, was a company that I looked up to, saw the work they were doing and how much they were really plugged into the culture. And I thought, that's a company I want to work for. So I sat in my head, I was like, right, I want to be a junior creative there at some point. I want to get my foot in the door. I want to find a way in. And so what I did is I managed to find a big bunch of email addresses from a friend of mine who was doing work experience there, and he had all their emails. So what I did is I emailed every single email at the same time. I didn't BCC him or anything. Looking back, it's a bit weird. But I emailed them all and I said, hey, like, I'm Jordan. You know, I'm 17. I'm really interested in brands, creative, strategy, all those sort of things, which I've had some experience doing before in an amateur sense. So I have had my own clothing company. I've had a kind of film magazine. I've done little projects here and there. And I said to them, right, look, I would love to come and just spend some time with you and learn a bit more about what you do. I kept it super informal. And from I think the 15 or so that I messaged, I think 2 got back to me. And they said, yeah, come in for a chat. So I went in for a chat, had a really nice tea. This was just before Glastonbury as well on the Sunday, and before I turned 18 on that Sunday as well. And I said, yeah, this is who I am. This is what I'm into. And they were like, cool, let me introduce you to someone who might be more suited in more of the kind of brand side of things, and more of the agency. But I didn't know what an agency was or how it all worked. And so Amelia was the girl at the time, and she introduced me to a guy called Ian Richardson.
Okay, yeah.
Who I met with, and we got on really well. And I was like, dude, look, I'd love to spend some time with you. He was like, right, why don't you come next week? So I was like, cool, let's do it. So I went in next week, the following week, after Glastonbury and after I turned 18. And I loved it so much, and we clicked so well in terms of what I was doing and how I was able to slot in and kind of immediately learn from everyone, but also add something and add that value back in terms of my kind of cultural understanding, I guess, at the time. And so then I worked there all of that summer for about 6 weeks. Then I went off to King's, which I still did because I hadn't got a full-time job at the time. And I was like, right, let me just go. And I was at King's for a solid 12 weeks. So
nice.
I managed the whole semester. And whilst I was at King's, I was doing work experience advice every Friday.
Yep.
And the degree I was studying was a degree called digital culture, which of all things is like quite ironic that I was studying it during the week, and then at advice I was actually
doing it.
Digital
Yeah.
And there was something that wasn't clicking with that as well. Like being at uni from Monday to Thursday, and feeling as if everything I was learning just wasn't right and wasn't clicking with what was really going on, and then working in it on the Friday, I was like, this isn't right for me. So I spoke to the guys at Vice, and they said, look, we'd love to give you a full-time job if you want to come. You know, we didn't want to annoy your parents and sort of pressure you out, but if you want to come, there's a space for you. So after that was around Christmas, and then I didn't come back after Christmas to King's.
What did your parents think? Like,
they were so supportive of it, because they understood that it was to be fair, they never, even with the whole uni thing to begin with, they weren't pushing me, or they weren't sort of pressuring me to go, which was great. I never felt like I was sort of a failure if I didn't go, or a failure if I didn't.
Had they been to university?
Yes, both. My dad actually went to Oxford ages ago. My mum did, but later on. They'd had sort of a slightly unconventional journey anyway, both of them. So I think they understood that things are different, and I think now anyway, as you'll know better than anyone, it's like there isn't a rule book to how you succeed. There isn't a rule book to how you get your foot in the door and how you can make an impact. And I think they got that, so they were great. And yeah, I mean, it was a bit, I think it was more like, okay, in their circle of friends and people who were in my family, sort of more extended, who might not have that same idea.
Yeah.
That was a bit like, okay, well, is he all right? What's he doing? All that I kind of failed, when actually it was the start of what would turn out to be a really good move. Yeah.
And then you were at Vice for a year?
I was at Vice so in total it was about 9 months, because I was in Vice when I got back. Ian Richardson asked me, super slightly asked me, I've just been given the opportunity to go to Lab Bible to set up their creative agency. Do you want to come with me? And I was like, of course, like, why would I not? I just thought, I'm 18, let's just go for it. But he had a bit of a period of gardening leave, so during that time I couldn't say anything, and then I went over with him and joined at Lab Bible to sort of build their agency. It was me, him,
That's
an amazing
Joyride,
guy.
right?
Joyride, yeah. So what became Joyride. A guy called Will Hain, and then James Baines, who was at Vice as well before, who'd worked with Ian. So we came over, and we were the sort of founding team of that agency, which is now I think about 30 to 40 people strong, which is really cool.
What really got you excited about the two companies that you worked for there? You've got Lab Bible, which were creating awesome content for, I suppose, slightly different demographic to Vice.
Oh yeah.
And aiming at a completely different angle.
Completely.
Like, why make the move so happily from Vice to Lab
I think
Bible?
because I was just, and that was something that was going through my mind. It's like, right, I'm at a place that is seen as like one of the coolest media companies in the world. It really appeals to that kind of aspirational youth audience that I felt a part of at the time. But then for me, the opportunity with Lad was, all right, you've got a company that's had a very pretty tainted and quite awful history with a lot of the stuff that they were getting up to and doing. But we've been given the opportunity to bring our expertise from Vice to go there and make some kind of positive change in that environment. That for me was like, I have to do that. And to be sitting on an audience Vice has this audience and it is what it is, and it's nowhere near as much as some of the new starters that came up, like a Lab Bible, who at the time was, I think, about 10, 15 mil, grew to about 30 mil by the end of the time I was there, across all their channels. And so I think it was, being able to go to somewhere with such mass was really exciting to me. And I was a fan of, growing up with Lab Bible, growing up with Vice.
Yeah.
For good or for bad. And I think there was something about knowing that, anything I made, I would also, if I was not in the building, be watching and consuming. That was really, really cool.
And do you think that helped in terms of coming up with the ideas 100%. And being a creative in that team?
100%. I mean, I think like still to this day, and, Vice and Lad, everything that I've done, I've felt has been just thinking, okay, what would I enjoy? Like what would me as a fan or me as a consumer, am I proud of this content? Am I proud of this idea? Would I engage with it? Because being in a business that's trying to target me, in a way trying to target, Gen Z youth audiences in the UK, if I think, okay, what would me and my friends be laughing at? Or what would me and my friends be enjoying? It became a really good soundboard creatively to say, right, I know that idea is going to bang or going to do well, which worked well. And I guess it's a way of kind of winging it that has some methodology to it in a strange sense, I think.
And what did you learn at Vice that you were instantly, being at 18 and coming into a founding group of a small agency in a decent sized company at that point? The London office quite small at that point.
Yeah, it was about 15 people.
Yeah, so a decent, quite a large infiltration into the Lab Bible office from Vice.
Yeah.
What did you learn from Vice that you brought into Lab Bible that you thought, okay, well, this is what we need to do to make Lab Bible? I suppose the main thing was perception change, right?
100%. Well, perception is, if there's one thing that I still to this day, and with all the clients that we work with at YMU, with YMU as a whole, with everything that I've been involved in, the biggest lesson that Vice and Shane Smith and that whole team there taught me was perception is reality, and that was something that Shane drilled into the business. That if we go out there and say we are the coolest company in the world, people will believe that you are. And if you live it, breathe it, if you walk it and talk it, it's like you can drive perception change. And I think that was something around, to bring to Lab Bible that I think both Ian, myself, Stephen Mai, who came over as the head of marketing, Ian Moore, like Lab Bible took a big chunk of the Vice team in a way. And we came over together. And I think one of the biggest things we always knew was around perception. And I think also we knew what was cool, that we knew how to make something that had a blend between, design, creative, a flair and an energy to it that I think is what made Vice amazing and has made Vice amazing for however many years. It's having that kind of finesse. And I think if you're pairing that finesse, that sort of aesthetic, that slick sort of energy that Vice brings with, the Lab Bible audience and demographic, you've got a really nice pairing, which is what we tried to do. And
you were super young at that point. And I remember being 18 in a decent sized corporation. And also like a startup vibe, it's still a startup at that point.
Yeah.
In Lab Bible, what was 80 people at that point?
Yeah, something like that.
Most of which were in Manchester. What were the blockers? I suppose you had the beauty of being in a very young environment. Like most people in that business were like younger than 30. Definitely. I'd say average age in that business at that point was 25, 24. But what were the blockers going through Vice and Lab Bible? I also want to go into that in terms of where you are now as well. But as a young person, and I felt them as well. Like what do you think the blockers?
Well, I think the blockers always are kind of, what's your credibility to talk about something, and have you had the experience to do it? I feel like with all of that though, it hasn't been significant, and I think it's a testament to all the companies I've worked for that they've embraced me with my age, and age has never once come up as a negative or as any point of me potentially not being in the position where I am or not being able to say what I say or do what I do, which I think has been amazing, and I think a testament to the people I've been working with, because as you say, I think it's not everyone would say that. I mean, at least on face value that's what they say. And I think for blockers potentially would have been around when you get thrown into the world of agencies, when you get thrown into the world of working with brands. It's learning and having to learn very, very quickly how to operate properly, because that's something that you can't learn unless you've been around it for a while. And I think when you're thrown into that, and you're thrown into pitches, and you're thrown into coming up with ideas, decks, like making sure that you're producing the best quality work, I think you need really good leadership around you to help guide that, or else you'd be like super out of your depth.
Process and structure, right? Which is just something that school thinks it teaches you, but it doesn't really not. In comparison to the real world. Completely.
And I was lucky enough to, the school that I was at did teach me a lot of that in an educational sense, but it's more around, how can you do something that an agency or a brand is going to turn around and say, right, that's right for me? How can you create an idea that's not just an idea, but it's built around whole activation? How can you make something that's a lot deeper and bigger and has strategy behind it and insight? I think it's those sort of things that, you know, takes time to build up.
The expectations of the world are much greater than you
Exactly.
even possibly imagined when you walk into the world of work at 18.
I mean, you must find that, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm the
having
same.
found that, you know, around
I
with
also
goat and
think,
everything.
I think there is an innate ageism in the industry, especially in the media and creative world, especially when you're talking to brands. I think people want to. I think we're in an industry where at least they kind of need to listen, so they know they need to listen.
Yeah.
They still don't like it. Maybe it's because they find it patronizing. Maybe it's because they find it scary.
Yeah.
And they're fearful that they're going to get shown up by someone younger, or they're apprehensive about even being in a conversation with someone aged 21, 22.
And you know what? There's a part of me that does. There's a part of me that does appreciate that, and I think it's not necessarily right at all. But I understand that. I understand where it comes from, because I think we're going to probably be in a position in not. And the thing is, the gaps are going to get shorter and shorter. Where in not too distant future, we're going to be the odd ones in the room. And I think it's the case of, you know, I'll probably remember, and I can already feel a sense, you know, even things like TikTok, the way that that's blown up, the way that there is a whole generation coming up beneath us that is different and thinks differently and has a different perception of the world and operates differently on social, uses media differently. It's like, how long can we keep this relevance, or how do we adapt our relevance in the industry to ensure that we, I guess, can be the kind of older people who bring the youngers up? I don't know how we do it, but it's definitely a challenge.
I think it's also interesting to see how many decision makers in the next 5 years are going to be of our generation.
Definitely.
You know, how many people aged 27 to 35 who, you know, in 5 years' time, you know, they were either 22 or 30. You know, they lived in our sort of generation.
100%.
You know, those guys are going to be the ones that are signing off budget, and they're going to be the ones leading brands. They're going to be the ones leading agencies in the next 5-10 years.
Completely.
And the whole world's going to change based on it, because it's, you know, at the moment people spend money on TV just because it's what they know.
Yeah.
Whereas someone aged 24 right now, in 10 years' time, if I was running McDonald's brand, I've got no interest in doing TV ads to the level they do it. I don't think it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
But I don't think it should be the number one thing they spend money on.
Completely. And I think, you know, the makeup of the brands that are the biggest brands in the world is going to shift as well. And I feel as if people are increasingly moving to brands, especially in kind of our generation, Gen Z and below, moving to brands that are more boutique and are smaller and are more independent, and also get them on a cultural and sort of relatable level. And I think that's partly what's driving a lot of the brand, even things like Pretty Little Thing, Misguided Nascal, and what the Kamani family have done amazingly has shaken that industry so much. And I think that's because they've really understood that it has to be about the voice of that generation that they're trying to hit, and not just, what do we think as the brand managers or the brand directors? It's almost, okay, what do you think as an audience? And I feel like that, in terms of how brands are operating and how they're managed, I think, as you say, it's going to shape things up really nicely. And I think that's where the opportunity is for people like us, I think, potentially in the future.
Well, I think it comes into Gen Z, and like you said, what are they doing? How are they changing things? You know, most people aged 13, 14, 15 have 2 Instagram accounts. They've got one that they hide and one that they're happy to be the face of, right? You know, that as a 40-year-old is like incomprehensible. But I don't do it, but I can appreciate why. And then someone aged 15 is like, why wouldn't you do that?
Completely.
And it's exactly the same situation I'm in with, well, I was in 3-4 years ago, when I was like, well, why wouldn't we use Twitter 40 times a day?
Yeah.
Whereas someone the ages above me were like, why are you on Twitter so much?
Completely.
It's different media habits are changing even faster, whereas before the difference between a 30-year-old and a 50-year-old wasn't that great in how they consume media.
100%.
Whereas now the difference between a 24-year-old and a 20-year-old is completely different. Like, it's ridiculous. The different platforms they use, the different ways they consume, different ways 100%. They create. And I think it's because also you've got that difference in the things they can do with media. They can create, they can view, they can consume in mass, they can consume in small amounts, long form, short form. There's just so many different ways.
And I mean, isn't it as well that, you know, and it's something that I was thinking about with TikTok, and what I think so exciting about about the creativity that I see on that platform and how it's gonna, I think, breed a generation of, as I think Vine helped to do, breed a generation of super creative individuals that aren't necessarily in the industry, but are just average people with the abilities and skill sets in terms of video editing, putting clips together, like sound editing. Like there's so many things that platform, similar to how Instagram did in a sense on the photo side,
100%
editing, right? It's like these tools that are now so mainstream are providing the vast majority of people in the world who are young, who are using them, with tactical skills that they can use, intangible skills that they can use, that would take people, years going through film school to really get to. And it's crazy to think about it, but like these kids, if you watch some of these videos, as you'll know, like this stuff, the way they do their transitions, the way they use like comedy, their timing, like all these things, it's like that's a skilled generation that's coming through, and that is mainstream. It's not just a few people, that's like everyone.
I think you're right. Vine was a great example of, if we look at some of the biggest content creators on the planet right now, Vine doesn't exist, but those guys do.
Completely.
Because it bred that ability to be creative within 6 seconds, which is a very tough task. But the people that managed to do it were obviously born creatives, born content creators.
Completely.
Look at the two Paul brothers are probably the greatest examples of people that have come from Vine and become huge stars.
Yeah, like
on
Lele
other platforms.
Pons, King Batch. Like those two have obviously been
King Batch
way
is a
above
great
Nash
example.
Grave. I mean, it's amazing to see. I think, and also what's interesting is that from a video editing side specifically, I think people forget that the creators that exist on YouTube, Vine, TikTok, wherever it might be, they're editors as much as anything else. And actually, what that's doing, I think, performers, but it is the full package, and that's where I think brands are yet to harness that properly. I think nobody's really harnessed that properly, giving these 360 talented individuals who are performers, editors, shooters, sound engineers. They do the full mix. They can do end to end in terms of content delivery. Giving them the ability to really drive with that and really create for them is, I think, the next opportunity that obviously you guys are doing an amazing job at starting that process. But I think and that takes a humility from the brands to think, right, hold on a minute, maybe a Logan Paul, I think Logan Paul's the best example, but maybe a King Batch or a Lele Pons will produce better content for my brand than me trying to produce it well, if that makes sense.
So how do you think that brands right now are failing to connect with that generation?
You know what? I think everyone's trying, and I think we hit the point. I think about 2-3 years ago, I would have said they failed to connect, and I think generally the connection still really isn't there, hence why a lot of young people are moving to alternative brands, things that I'm saying with Pretty Little Thing and among others. But I think brands, if they do fail to connect, are failing to do so because they're not bringing enough young people into the room. And I do think it is that challenge. And also I do believe that there is a gap currently, and you guys, I mean, your average age is what, probably like
24, 25, yeah.
I mean, you're doing an amazing job at getting that talent in, but I think not enough businesses, brands, I think generally, it's not just in the brand side, are good at finding that talent. And I think there is a real opportunity for whoever can close the gap between where all these talented young people are, who are creating content, who understand the culture better than anyone else, who are spending however many days on hours on social media a day, bringing them into these businesses, because they're currently, I feel like they're living in two separate worlds. And so the earlier and sooner those brands can bring those kids in, the better. And that's when I think they'll start to properly connect. And I think, that will take time. I think the reality of this is that, social media has only been in existence properly for about 4 or 5 years, really with like Instagram and the way that's blown up the whole kind of industry. It's not a long thing. And actually the slow pace that brands move, because they are big corporate entities, it will take time. It might be the next 5 to 10 years really that things start to kick on. It was only going one direction, but I do cut them a little bit of slack.
If there's someone listening to this from a brand or an agency that wants to heed your advice and go, okay, well, let's prove it then. Let's get a few young people into the room. Where do you find these guys? Where'd they find another Jordan? Where'd they find more people like the people that we've got?
I think it's... How do I think you find them? I think
it's hard, right? That's the biggest thing is there's so many kids out there, all with a decent understanding of this landscape. How would you separate kid A to kid B to become the next guy you want in the room? Because, you could give that opportunity to so many different people.
I mean, I think one way that, we tried at Lab Bible actually, and it did work really well, was having a more aggressive apprenticeship scheme and actually driving that in-house. I mean, we had 2 amazing kids who are now, I mean, you'll probably know them, Kit Chilvers and Ira.
Yeah.
I can't remember Ira's last name, but they run Puberty and a bunch of other big meme pages. They started all that off when they were at Lad, and these are 2 kids who at the time, I remember, when they joined, they were about 15, 16, 14 even maybe, and they spent their time, whatever the minimum age for apprenticeships is, it was young. And I remember they spent loads of time at school. They were just making accounts constantly, and they were making these accounts. They were hitting 100, 200,000 people per account, and they were just managing to grow them at such a speed. They had a few that were over a mil, and so we spotted them and brought them in as apprentices to Lab Bible, and it was the most amazing idea, because what you got was two kids who were living and breathing the culture really at the forefront, not also being 18, 19, but being 14, 15, who really, really understood what their friends wanted, what they wanted, and were able to communicate that on social properly. So we ended up having a real period of growth purely through having those two kids in the office. And I think it was such an amazing thing. And so for brands and businesses, like, are they drilling through in their marketing teams, are they building out apprenticeship opportunities for young kids that are sort of social media apprenticeships, and can you then be competitive with the people you get through the door from the applications? I'm sure you'll get some good people coming.
And what do those people, so if we're still talking about getting those young people in, what do those young people want in a business that's different to someone even our age? Like,
completely.
Because obviously we've grown a decent sized business here, and even how I felt when I was 18, 19, 20, working at Sport Lobster in a 70-person business, going through my wants, needs, desires as part of the business and part of growing through that business are very, very different, and also expectations. Very, very different to lots of the people sat out there, and they're 21, 22, 23. And the expectations of, 7 years, 6 years, are very, very different to how they are right now.
Completely. I mean, I think, and it's what you said. I mean, the funny thing is, for the younger kids who are coming through, I'm not even the person to ask, because I don't even know. And that's the funny thing. It's like, I'm 22 and I still don't think that I understand what the needs are going to be of these kids who are 16, 17 years old coming through. I think what my gut is that, there is a greater need for freedom, for flexibility, but also for tangible lessons in how they can improve their skills, and a slightly more hands-on leadership, I think, in the sense that, can you teach these kids how to get good at some of the basic business things that you need to be good at, time management? Can you help them get good at finance? Can you help them get good at, presentation and delivery, but also allow them the creative freedom to innovate? And I do also believe that companies will need to start being a bit more, slightly more hands-off in how their employees kind of take themselves out into the world in terms of their own brands. Because if you think about it, you're not just bringing in kids, you're bringing in mini brands in a sense, mini personality brands. And actually more and more kids nowadays, I mean, if you look at, if anyone's got 13, 14-year-old siblings or people in their family, they've all got 2,000-3,000 people on Instagram, like they are engaged. Like that's a little mini influencer right there in a way. And I think employees and companies knowing that, and harnessing that in a way and giving them the freedom to grow their own brands whilst being in a sort of master brand is more of an opportunity than trying to suppress that. Because I think it's easy to think, oh God, they're going to be focused on building X, or they're going to be slightly too distracted or trying to do their own thing. But actually harness that properly, you've got a real.
So you think it's like a new generation is going to give us a new sense of employer branding, and the opportunity for actually as a business to harness it
completely
is going to be the ability for your company's brand to grow far greater than it ever has before.
And that's exciting. Yeah, massively. I think that's so exciting, because the reality is, and you'll know this, like, people buy people, they don't buy businesses or brands. And I feel like for a lot of the young kids coming through, they, if they can have strong personality brands and they can be out there and be visible as the face of a business or one of many faces of a business, it stands a greater chance for that business to not only hire new people in, but also drive, in theory, quite a lot of results their way, because you've got mini ambassadors. So instead of needing to have many talent ambassadors on board, you've got an army of people already in the building who can kickstart that process for you. And I think it's not being naive to the power of that in a way.
And I think we've touched on it, already, but this new generation, or the generation we're living in, what are our expectations from brands now? Because I think the key things that you mentioned there are, especially when working for companies, is like flexibility, is like empowerment. It's about the ability to kind of manage your own progress throughout your career, or have an expectation constantly about what your next step is. Understand that. For brands, my belief is it's all about sustainability. People want to know what they're buying, where they're buying from, what it is, what does it stand for. And I think that's probably the biggest one, actually. It's like, actually people want to know what a brand stands for right now. And I think some of the biggest brands in the world have done a very, very good job realizing that and positioning themselves really, really nicely. Look at Adidas, what they stood for, and Nike in some ways, what they've stood for in the last few years has completely changed from what they've traditionally been.
Completely.
Because they've had to quickly align to understand who their new generation of consumers is.
Completely. And I think it's it shows the power that consumers do still have over brands. I mean, I think it's easy to sometimes think that these big evil corporations are doing what they do and you can't influence them or have any kind of influence or control. But actually, you know, brands are purely populist. They have to be, otherwise they don't survive, right? And especially the biggest brands in the world, if they don't get it right and if they don't listen to their core, you know, consumer base, they will fade and they will die out. And I think they all understand that. So I think it's a testament, I think, as you're saying, you know, around things like sustainability. I mean, who would have thought that there would be such a rapid change, in my mind, watching it, a rapid change of attitude and alertness from brands to understand the importance of sustainability and the importance of driving an eco-friendly proposition. I mean, that has happened over the last year, really.
Yep.
I mean, I've seen a quick domino effect of brands picking it up and really understanding that. And that's an amazing thing and such a great testament to the consumers. I think what it's done as well is it's shown that, I think, and social's done this, because there is more of a dialogue now between brands, businesses, whoever that might be, and their audience and their consumer base. It's forced them to listen more intrinsically because the consumers on social have a voice now that they didn't have before.
It's two-way, right?
Exactly.
Brands aren't just popping ads out anymore. People can respond to those ads very fast.
Exactly, and people will say if those ads suck, and they will say if they hate what that brand just did, and they will make it known. They'll start a hashtag, they'll start a boycott. I mean, the amount of brands that have been cancelled in 2019 is crazy. Like,
nuts.
you know what I mean? So I think it's like
you're at risk far more than. So as a brand, you're at risk of hurting your brand, whereas before, brand safety was very much about keeping within the brand guidelines, whereas now it's even more about actually keeping yourself safe, because any wrong move can kill you instantly.
And it's also keeping you safe within the populist conversation. It's not an easy time to be a brand, because especially if you've got people inside who aren't necessarily as aware as they should be around, you know, cultural nuances, around things like racism, sexism, around things like feminism. You know, if the people inside the brands aren't fully in sync with that, they'll make mistakes quickly. Because also the other thing, and this is also what you're touching on, is that brands are now in a position where they're having to constantly create and constantly generate new ideas, new campaigns, new content. And the reality of that is that does expose you, because if you get that wrong, you're screwed, and you could end up doing something, you know, like what, you know, good example being what happened with H&M recently over the last 2 cases with their models, or, you know, I mean, there's numerous examples out there.
It's the worst time ever to be a social media manager, and worst time ever to be a brand manager.
Well, your job is like, because if you make one mistake, the challenge is you're told, and your job is to have personality and give the brand personality. And I always say that you can feel now that the brands have all hired, like, obviously these interns to be their social media managers, because they all have the same tone of voice, and it sometimes does feel like Coke, Burger King, Wendy's all like, you know, created and all run by like the same kid who's like probably about 18 years old, just finished uni, got a bit of banter about him, but you can tell that sort of quippy thing. And I feel like the challenge with that is, you know, you're constantly exposed, and you make one wrong move or you push the joke too far and you're screwed. It's pretty much an impossible job, because how can you have humor without pushing the boundaries?
That's what it's all about.
But then how do you respond when those boundaries are pushed and the backlash naturally comes? Because you're never going to satisfy everyone if you're trying to be funny.
No, of course.
So it's almost like, okay, well, what do you do? Like, how do you do
and it's not Burger King's job to be a stand-up comedian. So they've always in that tussle, right, where should we even be funny? But obviously that gets the engagement. Engagement is important in order for people to see our content, in order to see our brand, for us to own the share of voice against the McDonald's, who are also doing that. So why don't we do it to go up against them? It's so hard.
It's so difficult, and I feel for them. I mean, I know the guys who do all the Burger King stuff. Cooler is a friend of mine, Adam Klein, who used to be CEO at Lab Bible, and James Parker, who did that tweet. The biggest tweet of all time, and he won a Grand Prix for it at Cannes Lion, smashed it, and it's amazing. Fair play to him, and he's brilliant at what he does.
And it was so simple.
Yeah, it was so simple, and it was, you know, brilliant and fair. You know, it's the same, fair play to him. But I think it's not an easy job, and I also think there is a bigger question: will this continue going forward? I think brands are gonna want to have their voice. I understand that, but are they gonna keep trying to entertain in the same way that they're doing it, or they're going to have to take a more withdrawn approach, because the collateral damage that comes from sending out the wrong tweet or replying in the wrong way is almost too great to handle. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, you guys would be closer to that side of things, but
yeah, look, I think it's hard. I think we are in the entertainment years of social media, where content is everything, and the requirement for creating as much content as possible is greater than ever. And in order to legitimize yourself or justify creating so much content, you need to get the engagement. In order to get the engagement, you need to push boundaries, or you need to do something different. And doing stuff that's different splits opinion. That's just how being different is.
completely.
You know, the fact that we vlog every day, you know, we don't get that much negative feedback, but I'm sure it splits opinion. You know, but that's part and parcel of doing something against the norm, against status quo. And, you know, Burger King making jokes about individuals does split opinion.
Yeah.
And, you know, whether or not that's Kanye fans who don't like it, or it's whatever, like Kardashian fans who don't like it, like, you know, whether it's a small group of people or a large group of people, everything where you're going against what you're expected to do isn't going to resonate with everyone, like you said a minute ago. And as a brand, that is very dangerous, because
100%.
you alienate those people. And I think lots of them have gone down the route of, we're okay to alienate X amount of people in order for Y number of people
to
actually loving us more. And they're just playing
completely
a huge gamble, a huge probability game.
And I think that, you know, it's one thing when it's splitting opinion in a loose sense, is another when the line gets crossed and it turns into something that, you know, could be deemed as racist, sexist, whatever it might be. And then you can see whenever that sort of thing happens to a brand, that the tone around the conversation shifts, and they realize, shit, this could be the end of us type of vibe. You know what I mean? And I think they do. You can always sense that, and that's where it's like, okay, if you're alienating a group of people, how far do you alienate them? You know, and how far do you push it, and how dark do you go, how deep do you go? And it's a very, very thin line.
Yeah, I think, you know, I always said when I was, how long ago? 6 years ago, when I started being a social media manager, I said to the guys then, it's the hardest job in the world. Like, people don't understand how difficult it is, and everyone just puts it down, boils it down to being, you just send a few tweets, you just post one. I mean, it's so hard to be that on it all the time, where you're always thinking about the next witty comeback or the next reply, or you've got in one breath you've got to be super funny, another breath you've got to be really serious, you've got to reply to a customer who's having a bad time. Or it's so difficult, and it requires, more than it ever has, such a wide range of skills: video editing, photo editing, copywriting, to a level that we've never seen since the early days of headline writing in newspapers. And the ability to do all of those three at the same time in such a short amount of time in order to make a maximum impact.
Mate, I mean, you know, it was always absolutely like mind-blowing to sit there in the Lab Bible Manchester office and watch them do their stuff. Like, I have the utmost respect. There are so many amazing people there, people like John O'Yates, who's a good friend of mine, people like Elliot Kurjan, Elbows, amazing, you know, Mike Vaughan, they're amazing, Psalms and I mean, there's such amazing talent now who've come from, James Parker's another example of one who've come through that funnel, or that kind of that world of having to churn out, as you're saying, just churn out constant gold. And it's like, if it doesn't go well, it gets deleted, it's on to the next thing. It's I think in a lot of brands and companies' minds, it's almost like, oh, there are a million of them, but actually there aren't, and there aren't.
Yes,
there aren't,
that's true. That's true. That everyone thinks they're very disposable.
And the problem with that is you then get a lot of people coming into brands and agencies and so on who are just not very good, because they're a social media manager, but they actually aren't very good at the real sort of hard stuff, which is what I think only really being in a publisher environment, or an environment where you're constantly churning, gets you to be in terms of a level, which is why Lab Bible, Uni Lad, Joe do churn out really good people from a social media management and content creation perspective, because they're just used to the churn and the flow. And also what that does is it forces you to learn very quickly what works and what doesn't work, right?
Yes.
So you're constantly having to be better and push. Otherwise you won't get the engagement, you won't get the results, and then the company,
right? Yeah. And the fact that not everything's going to work.
Completely.
And that attitude is quite a good attitude.
Completely.
But it's kind of like you said, it's like sieving for gold, and sometimes you feel a massive lump of it in your heart.
100%. And that's also where I think, you know, brands and the businesses that are going to survive and thrive the most going forward are going to be the ones that have the infrastructure in-house that's nimble and fluid and adaptable, so they can just try, and they're not going to get everything right, but it's not having to go through 100 people to get something signed off. It's being able to say, right, we trust you as somebody who gets it, who's culturally rich and has an understanding of what they're doing, to be able just to go for it and give it a shot, and also to learn from the mistakes if it doesn't go right. And it's how do you create that safe environment for people to play in? That's, I think, the most interesting thing.
So let's jump back to your kind of career timeline. We're at Joyride at Lab Bible. It's going well. It's growing. The Lab Bible London office is growing. I must have come in and first met Ariane probably when there were 25 people in that London office. So that must have
probably came there while I was there.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. So 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago.
Yeah, it would have been.
And like, what were the key things you learned there? Because you had to learn fast.
Massively. I mean, I think what I learned there was, it was really, how do you ask your audience what they want? Probably the number one thing that I've taken and I've run with, and I think it's been amazingly valuable. How do you ask, the community? If you're sitting on a bank of 10 million people, 30 million people, however many people there are, how do you ask them what they want from you versus the other way around? I think that was massively useful, and I think that applies now to the world of talent that I'm working in. I think the engagement difference when you just ask, you say, what do you want? What do you want from me as a creator? How can I add value to your lives? What do you want to talk about? Like, that really makes a difference. And Lad, we really drove with that and led with that for a while. I think it taught me about how to balance brands and how to work with brands and how to say to them, no, that's not going to work because of X, Y, and Z. Here's how we change it and tweak it. And it taught me the compromise, because that's obviously the game of any agency or any sort of conduit. It's how do you manage the compromise between the two. But knowing that the Lab Bible audience was very specific in their taste and they wouldn't take stuff that wasn't really, really A-star, like, you really had to manage that. And I think brands that we work with, they learned how to play that game, and that's something that was definitely a lesson. I think it also taught me, I was lucky enough to go and do hosting and presenting and, cover things like the EMAs and, red carpets and sports personality and be out there and speak to people. I think it taught me, weirdly, in a world of now talent that I'm in, taught me how to work with talent and how to engage with talent, who, in a way that I didn't necessarily expect coming out of it. I think it definitely taught me that. And also just how to be confident enough in my own understanding of culture and what's going on right now to be able to say, no, I do know what's going on. And I have a voice, and I'm able to kind of, make an impact and to have that confidence. I think is something that definitely Lad enabled me to do, but also it did teach me how to double down on that when I was speaking to brands or pitching to brands or speaking to partners or, talent, whoever it might be. But it was an amazing time. Like, I did love it.
So why leave?
So I leave because I got to the point where I felt as if it was changing quite rapidly. A lot of the best people I'd felt had left.
Okay.
So quite a lot of people had started to trickle out, but also
lots of people start their own businesses, right?
Yeah, I mean, so many. The amount of social media management companies actually, like, P&B Social.
I know Jono. I know
Social Alchemist.
Todd
Hunter. Yeah.
Like, so many people who'd made careers out of the Lab Bible brand, and also the Unilab brand as well, like people in that business who have left to create their own businesses.
Definitely. Liam Bonds, I think, got one. A lot of them have started. But I think for me, what it was is that, forgetting everything else, and I have a lot of love and respect for Lab Bible, and I always will. I think for me, the biggest thing was that I was 19 to 20 in the industry at that point, and I realized that I had value that I could take and bottle and turn into some kind of service proposition for other companies and other brands. And also I just wanted to find a way to experience more, I think, because I think Lad was great, don't get me wrong, but going from being a kind of creative strategist at Lad to then having my own agency, learning how running a business works, learning how to manage cash flow, how to manage accounts, how to manage tax, how to manage employees, how to do all of those things. I thought, fuck it, I will go head first into the deep end a little bit and then just find my way. And because I've always felt in my life that that's the best way to learn.
Yep.
And I think it really was. And I came out of that experience with having worked with 10 brands or 10 not brands, 10 companies, some of which including brands, rather than having only been at Lab Bible and Vice, one of them being James Grant at the time. And then what happened there was it was so much fun working with them, every week. It started off as like 2 days a week, or started off as just a few projects. Then from there went to 2 days a week. 2 days a week went to 3 days a week. And then by the end of it, it was like, look, I'm so invested in the journey and in this ambition that this company has, that Mary, who brought me in, Mary Beckett in entertainment when she was the MD there, that she had, the understanding that she had, the clients that we had. And I just thought, what an amazing cultural opportunity to be able to go into the biggest talent agency in Europe, and to be able to help future-proof their talent and to be given the platform to do that. I thought that was really cool. So hence I stopped the business, shut it down completely, and started in January 2018 there full time.
So what was just before you shut the business down?
Yeah.
Where were you at? Like, was it just you? Was it?
So there were 3 of us in the core team who were working across about 3 companies.
Okay. And it was more of a consultancy?
More of a consultancy. More of a, we go in, spend time working with them on whatever projects they had. Well, we're working with Dugout, football publisher, working with The Hook, working with Condé Nast and Glamour magazine on their relaunch, working with Boiler Room, working with MTV. We're doing quite a big suite of stuff.
So it was like cultural marketing consultancy, right?
Cultural marketing consultancy, but for Gen Z. I mean, this was at the time the only Gen Z labeled agency, which is why I was like,
what was it
called? Roundabout.
I remember when you launched it.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
I can't remember why.
Maybe it was the vlogs. I started doing.
Yes, you did.
Doing the vlogs.
Yes, that's why I watched the first one.
Oh, mate. No, I mean, that means a lot. I watched that. I was vlogging every day for the whole time. Fucking hell, I was editing for about 4 months. Okay, 3-4 months.
And you did all the edit?
Yeah, edited.
That's impressive.
Edited in the evening.
For people who are listening to this and pass that off as just like a comment, like, it is ridiculously hard to shoot and edit a video, regardless of doing anything else, let alone if you're even thinking about doing any other work.
Yeah.
To run a business and to shoot and edit on your own is an amazing.
No, mate, thank you.
Amazing, actually. I couldn't even imagine if we did that.
Oh man, I think it was. You know what? I managed to get a flow on where, I had my Canon. Pardon?
You put it on YouTube.
I did, but they're not there anymore.
Are you unlisted?
Yeah.
Yeah,
so they're all still there, but I
didn't
delete them. But I was like, I kind of wanted to, because for various reasons we can talk about in a minute. But yeah, I got into flow where we'd filmed it. I had my little Canon G7X on its Gorilla Pod, the vlogger camera, as everyone does.
Yeah.
And we'd film, and then I'd go home and then put it together and manage to find a way on Final Cut to cut it quite quickly and put some music on and everything. But yeah, I mean, look, it was an amazing time. I mean, that was working with 2 amazing people in the kind of core team. We ended up working with about 4 or 5 others who ended up joining and having roles within those different businesses. And the idea being that, it was a creative playground for Gen Z and helping brands to understand that generation authentically and to tap into it and working with people who are all within that generation. I mean, that was the concept, and I thought it worked really well. It did. I mean, it definitely.
So at that time, it was Snapchat.
Yep.
God, what else? I mean, Instagram stories at that point.
Yes.
Sort of launching or kind of hitting its. Certainly on the climb.
Yep.
Snapchat. What else was kind of in
It's
that?
kind of Instagram. I mean, IG stories was, because that was when I was at Lad. I did the first. I remember when Instagram stories came out, that was like my baby at Lab Bible. I kind of owned that because it was not no one else wanted to do it. But I was like, I think this is really fun. I'm going to use it. I'm going to go. I think the first ever Instagram story at Lab Bible was at the MTV EMAs over that weekend in 2017, which I covered, and that was the first kind of Instagram takeover that we did there because. Yeah, it was. I saw it as being something that was really exciting, but it hadn't taken off nearly as much as it did, obviously, as it has now. But yeah, and the stories. I mean, it was Facebook still kind of going, Facebook video slightly coming on the decline, but still having some relevance. And I mean, even like a company like Dugout, how did they use Facebook video to create kind of new style vids and short snackable content around football? Was the big thing. I was working with MTV more on how do they kind of drive Gen Z insight in the business, doing some workshops and talks with them. Condé Nast was really interesting. It was such a different experience, but working on Glamour magazine, that was something that I was leading on, and working on how do they take a magazine and turn it into a digital publisher, and sitting with their whole team and trying to strategize that out for a day or 2 and then helping them to do it was really cool. Again, I think more and more companies are forced into the position where they have to think right, what we need something new, and the magazine industry is a great testament to that because a lot of those companies have died. as a result of not being adaptable quickly. So yeah, it was them, and then James Grant was probably the biggest and the most fun by a long way. Hence why that became my.
There's a lot
my
of
home.
different verticals in there. You got sport, football, music, glamour, so fashion and beauty, lifestyle. What are your passions? Like what? And obviously James Grant covers kind of all of that.
Yeah. Well, that's the amazing thing I think about James Grant, and obviously now YMU. I think those are my things. I mean, music. A massive music fan, have been since for forever really. Film, just had my own film magazine back in the day, went to screenings, like wrote reviews, did all of that sort of stuff, and that was like now obviously working with amazing actors and film talent's really cool. Entertainment, I still watch quite a lot of TV, weirdly, not like linear TV, but like catch up and VOD stuff, like Netflix Prime. Like I try and keep up with the sort of cultural, the main kind of cultural headlines and from a content perspective. Sport, big football fan, Arsenal fan. For anyone who hates Arsenal, sorry, but yeah, big Arsenal fan. What else? I mean, just kind of pop culture really across as many. And that's why I think I found such a good home at James Grant, because James Grant YMU is pop culture. If you think about it, talent are at the heart really of pop culture. You're a talent business in your own way, and you understand that. That's why you connect brands to talent, because they sit at the heart of it. And I think that was the thing for me at James Grant. It's like, wow, like this is pop culture across every vertical that could exist. And so that's from a creative cultural perspective. If you're into stuff, and if you're into the culture, it's like that's the best opportunity there is really.
You were working there. You had your own business. Like what? I don't know what someone would have had to have said to me in order for me when there was 5 of us at Go, to get me to work for someone else again. Like once I left work, started my own thing properly with people I liked, spending time with, doing something that I loved. I'm not sure what anyone could have ever said to me in order to make me go and work for someone else again.
I completely get that. You know what? I think if it wasn't for YMU and James Grant, I don't think I would be starting my own thing. I would be still doing it, or I'd be doing something else. I think, and I would struggle for me in terms of, could I ever work for someone else again after this? Like, as in, having had my own business and knowing how much fun that was. It was tough, it was stressful, but knowing how, as you'll know, how satisfying that is. The only thing really was the team at YMU, and knowing that team, or James Grant at the time, and knowing how much that team trusted me and wanted me there. And it was also the fact that, for me, the cultural opportunity to be able to work with talent who sit across pop culture at it's not just any like really elite talent at the top of pop culture. Being able to have an impact on that was something that I never saw coming as an opportunity, and it's such a left field opportunity, I think, and especially when you come through the kind of social media agency world. It's such a different thing. It's almost a different pocket that I thought this is too good an opportunity to miss.
And something that needed disruption more than anything else. Like talent agencies have been the same for decades.
Completely.
And never changed.
Completely.
And something that requires so much disruption.
Completely.
And I suppose with the companies you'd worked at before, that you'd seen them disrupt a media owner
completely
world, which again needed disruption, as Glamour magazine saw, right?
Yeah.
That was a media owner
100%.
that was huge, and then the Lab Bible was.
It got disrupted by us.
It got completely screwed over, and then talent. Who knows? Something else going to come up, and bang, talent agencies as we know them just struggle.
Well, I think that's already happened, and that's why I think for James Grant and for at the time, this is also what's so exciting. It was we hit just the right note at just the right time to say we need to evolve now, and there isn't any time to wait. No. And I think what we've managed to do with so many of our clients, and how we've helped them evolve, and how we've worked with them to build brands that would have never existed before, and really get it to the heart of that social landscape, has been an amazing thing to watch, and to see the growth of the business, to have all the acquisitions come in, whether it's Troika, Impact Sports, have amazing talent come in the building, all understanding there's a bigger vision here that is around how do we build elite personality brands in pop culture. I mean, that for me, Roundabout was amazing, don't get me wrong, but that for me was something even a level up from that. And I also do think that I had a when I was thinking about it, there was a point where I was like, you know what, there's still so much I don't know.
Mm.
And actually let me learn. You could learn through doing, obviously, but let me learn in a business and in a bigger entity than myself that's been doing it since 1984. Let me get some of those learnings, and then when I'm ready and when the time's right, I can always take that back out. And learn, having had the experience of a proper corporate organization, which is invaluable.
Yeah, I suppose because you've got so much time, and I think I'm blessed with that as well. I feel very, very lucky, and I'm very, very grateful that, God forbid anything was to happen to this business, I've still got so much time.
Yeah.
And I suppose you were in that situation, right? Where, and I was in a very similar situation. I had my own business when I was 16. At 18, it was a profitable business. I could have not gone to university and just continue to do that. I decided to not go to university and work for someone else. And then I came back out and I learned from that huge amount of experience that I gained from working for other people and doing something much greater than I thought I could ever achieve myself. And then using that experience to go, actually, maybe I can achieve it myself, and I can do it with this, and this. And there's no way we'd be able to run Goat or, even believe that Goat can be the thing that we believe it can be, and it is, without the horrible experiences that went before it, right? And the things that we learn, and the things that we learned together. And we were very lucky as the three of us at Goat to learn together. And 100%. You never know who you're going to meet at any company. And Sportlabs was a very, very special place for that. And very much like your lab Bible, to be honest, where it was kind of like we were doing something so cool and different, and everyone wanted to be a part of it. We felt very privileged being inside the building. Yeah. And the people around you were doing so much cool shit, and you're like, oh wow, I'm almost in awe at every single person I look at.
Completely. And also, there's something about being part of something bigger than yourself, right? And being part of an entity and a team of really amazing people. And that's, for me, what stands out, and what always did stand out about James Grant was being around such brilliant, talented people who understood that there needed to be change, and they also needed different sorts of people to help them make that change. And so that's why I think, it didn't take long for me to think, this is definitely the way to go, and to realize that was the approach, even though it meant obviously leaving something that I've been growing, and we got to the point where it was, doing quite well, and we were getting clients and we were enjoying it, but the bigger picture was there. And so it felt like the gut feeling was that was the right thing to do, and I'm so very, very glad that I did.
So you've got traditional talent,
yeah,
and then you've got digital talent,
yeah.
So people that we'd call influencers, right? Just signed my good friends Zach and Jay.
Yep. Brilliant guys.
Amazing. And again, doing something a bit disruptive in even the influencer space, right? They're creating content that no one else can even think about.
Completely.
What attracts you to certain talent?
I think for me, it's having that.
They're actually on the podcast about how long were they? Zach and Jay, a month ago. Yeah.
Amazing. I think what attracts me to talent, I mean, people like Zach and Jay, people like Amelia de Moldenberg, who I helped to kind of bring into the fold. That was one of the first people I spoke to. Chicken Shop Day, yeah. She was one of the first people I spoke to once I joined. I was like, you need to come here. This is definitely going to be an amazing place for you.
Well, she was blown up through Lad, right?
We helped, the Chobani G episode. So that's how I knew her. So I knew her at the time because we were speaking to her about potentially working on something together at Lad. And then we stayed in contact. And then when I launched my agency, she said, Well,
she's great. She's again, it's these people who've created amazing niches and just double down
completely on it. And I think for us, it was in the talent that we sign, whoever it might be, it's not about how big your following is. It's not about, do you hit mass? It's do you create something that no one else is creating? Do you have a voice that no one else has? And are you more than just your content? Are you a personality brand?
Well, Amelia's a great example of that. Like, she did fantastic work with Amazon Sport.
Yeah.
And I've seen her doing a few other like promotions where I'm like, it's irrelevant that you're the Chicken Shop Day girl.
Exactly.
Her personality and herself and her comic timing and all the different things that you can see she's going to have a career beyond what she is now.
Completely. And that's exactly it. It's are you limited to your content and your world, or are you something more than that? Do you have
Zach and Jay the same, right? You can see them. You can see them presenting the red carpet somewhere.
Completely. And they will, no doubt they will be doing that. And
they're so E4, ITV, ITV2, BBC. But they're very BBC 3 2012 when everything was popping in
100%
on BBC 3.
And for me, I feel like the only way that some of the was, because it's funny as well that you talk about TV, right? As if that, and that's sometimes something that we also fall into, and some of the talent fall into around TV being the first book. But I think what's also interesting is, right, when Netflix, when Prime generates more revenue, because they're also new platforms, when they start diversifying regionally, and they need talent who understand the sort of short form world, but also could sit in a more premium space, which I think Amelia, Zach and Jay, Woody and Clooney as well. There's a few really good examples on our books of people who can do that. I think that's when it's going to get fascinating, because I think you're going to get to a point where those companies are having to churn out content constantly, and they will come to creators who are more than just, hey guys, this is me. You know, they're people who can tell stories. They're people who can, you know, put videos. I mean, Zach and Jay, like the amount of, and Amelia too, and Woody and Clooney, all of the guys we've got on the more sort of social side, they are brilliant when it comes to the comic timing, when it comes to the editing, when it comes to the optimization, when it comes to the storytelling. Zach and Jay's thing, you know, the way they tell their stories is always a thing for me with Zach, and having known Zach now for about a year and a half, knowing how talented he is at the storytelling part, that's the bit that always got me. I was like, this is special, and it's not something you can just replicate. Amelia, similarly with her editing, like the amount of time she spends editing her videos, the amount of, you know, how intricate they are, how funny they are, and how much she puts into that, she gets the reward because people love it as a result. And I think it's finding those types, and then there aren't many of them. That's the thing. There are many people out there who create, but not as many who create in that really unique and I think disruptive way, as you say.
Yeah, I think creating personalities beyond just the content,
exactly,
I think is exactly why I'm fascinated by those three examples, and plenty of other talent that I like and I enjoy both watching their content and also spending time with, is because actually I think that they're really smart and they've crafted something much greater than just the content they created. And also they've not just got lucky and popped through one piece of content and then 100%. They've just rested on their laurels. Zach and Jay popped on one piece of content and then they went, okay, well, we just need to keep coming up with amazing content ideas like that.
Exactly.
And they deserve all the success they get. So, yeah, I think you know, you're on the right lines. I think the talent world is going to get disrupted with something, something big.
What do you think it's going to be?
I think talent just required different things than they did 3 years ago, 5 years ago. So I think the streaming services are going to play a big part in it. I think you're right. I think TV channels were always the pinnacle of where a creator could go, and now it's not. It's a level playing field, and it's as impressive, or it's more impressive to me, that you get 1 million views a video and you release 3 pieces of video content a week on YouTube than if you get a TV spot. Whereas before, that was not the case. Even 3 or 4 years ago, it would still be seen as more of an achievement to see yourself on TV than get 3 million views on creative content. I'm not saying that every view is worth the same. And I think that playing field has been leveled even more by the entrance to the market of Amazon, the entrance to the market of Netflix, Hulu, Peacock, like all these
Disney Plus,
all of these over-the-top services are going to create so many more opportunities for amazing content to be created, and for personalities to have far more of a say as to what the content should be, rather than get pigeonholed into the things that BBC has to put out because it's the BBC, or what ITV has to put out because that's what they've always put out.
Completely.
Whereas Netflix, Amazon doesn't give a fuck about what they've always put out because they never have put it out. So they can create whatever content they want.
Definitely.
And they can be far less restricted on legacy because they've not got.
Well, they're writing it, right?
They're trying to make one.
That's such. I've never thought about that.
They can do that with amazing new talent.
Yeah, that's so interesting. The idea that these new companies are writing their legacy, whereas the companies that exist are trying to protect their own.
They're completely restrained by it.
That's so interesting. Yeah, which actually explains a lot around some of the moves that a lot of the more traditional companies might make, because they're trying to protect something. They're on the defensive versus on the offensive, and the ones who are on the offensive are the Disney Pluses, the Netflixes, the Primes, because they're only. I mean, if you think about it, they've only been around for 10 years max, if that. That's such an interesting thing. But I think, as you say,
it's like Zach and Jay could never be on BBC One. They couldn't. They just can't be on BBC One. But they could walk into a Netflix TV show.
Completely.
But that makes no sense.
Isn't it almost that the Netflix being, and there's something about the idea of internet TV, right? And the idea that the Netflixes and the Primes, they still, even though they're traditional in a sense, you know, it's Amazon, massive company, it's Netflix, massive company, they still sit in the internet world because they're on the internet, right? You watch them on your phone, you watch them on your PS4, you watch them wherever, but it's not linear.
You're not forced to watch it.
Completely.
You can watch it if you want.
Completely.
Whereas the psyche of old school TV channel is, well,
You're
it's
told what to
it's
watch.
9 o'clock on Saturday, so we've
have
got
to
to
watch
make
it, yeah.
content that's relevant to the people that watch our content on 9 o'clock on a Saturday, which is 35 to 50-year-old, 50% male, 50% female. Netflix doesn't give a fuck. It wants to create as much content as possible for as many different people as possible to keep you subscribing.
Completely.
So they are just in they're just
It's a
thinking about a
completely
completely different game.
Completely, and the type of talent you need for that as well changes massively. I think what's so interesting though about what you say around 9 o'clock TV and working with Ant and Dec and being very lucky to be able to work with those guys, and obviously they're the best at what they do. Those shows are getting bigger.
Yeah.
And what's funny is that at the top end, the shows are booming. It's the middle and lower tier that's struggling.
Yeah, because people still want to tune in for the big things.
Exactly.
And more than ever, because social conversations are powering those shows.
Completely.
I'm a Celeb,
Love
Island, all these things.
Completely.
All they've been boosted because people are talking about them on social. Creates curiosity, creates attention,
Completely.
and pushes them back to the TV
And you
show.
need those cultural moments. I think culture still needs those moments that are shared and that are live. And I think what will be interesting is
That's why sport is always going to
Completely,
succeed, right? 'Cause it's
completely.
going to be live. People are going to talk about it today.
100%. But what's interesting is, I don't know if you saw around what Netflix is planning around their serialization of their content. They're looking to go back to a week-by-week programming schedule, which I think is really interesting. They must have. I mean, they've been doing years of A&B testing, clearly. By
It must be to do with subscription, right? It must be to keep people.
Why'd you keep people there? But also because I think the kind of binge culture that they've forced, or no, not forced, but they've provided in a sense, I think that it takes away from the immediacy that people want to talk about stuff, and still culture and entertainment is around conversation as much as anything else.
I think I don't enjoy watching programs on a weekly release, but I wouldn't mind if they released it on a nightly. So if you go, okay, well, we've got 10 episodes, and it's going to be this week, it's going to be Peaky Blinders week, and we're going to release it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and the finale's going to be Sunday. I'd go, that's fucking great.
And that's the perfect blend, right? But that's what not Made in Chelsea, that's what Celebs Go Dating, Love Island's obviously spawned that, The Circle. I mean, The Circle's a good example of a show for Channel 4 trying that, and it works pretty well for them. I mean, it's a show that I believe will succeed and do very well. It's got Emma Willis in it, who's a client of ours. And it's interesting because even though it's sort of new, they've realised that actually people want consistent periodical content, and they want it in a way that they can talk about the next day at work. It's like it still comes back to that, right? And I don't think that's ever, because people are always going to be at work, they're always going to be at school, they're always going to be in social, communal environments. They will want stuff. They want content to talk about.
That's why the once a week doesn't really work. It works on the Sunday night show because you get the Monday morning, but then there's no conversation about it on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Whereas
you just talk about it, it's done.
Yeah,
That's
it's done.
Yeah.
And I think back to the last series of Line of Duty, which was amazing again, and one of the most successful TV shows this year.
Yeah.
But it was produced over 7 weeks, and you just want to watch the next one.
Completely.
And that's great. But by Thursday, I've forgotten the last one was on.
Yeah.
And therefore, I'm not as excited about Sunday. And then Saturday, I get excited about Sunday, and then Sunday, I'm excited to watch it. But there's that gap in the middle where I've just completely forgotten Line of Duty even exists. The Wednesday to Friday shift.
And that's the gap, right? But that's why Love Island's so successful, and that's why I'm a Celebrity. Yeah. To be fair, they got, because what the boys have done with the show and what ITV have understood, they've known that for years. And I think it's I remember the biggest moment at Lab Bible for traffic was always during the I'm a Celebrity ad breaks, because people were always going off I'm a Celeb, and they were tweeting about it and they were talking about it, and it blew up cultural conversation in a similar way to what Love Island's done now. And it's so fascinating to see that actually people still want stuff to talk about. And as you're saying, I think what's so interesting, right, is that it's almost, with those gaps, that's an opportunity for someone else to come in and take someone's attention away. Yep. That's the thing, right? It's like if you're leaving a gap of a week by week of weekly programming, if you're leaving the Monday to Wednesday or Monday to Friday, that's the opportunity for someone to get onto something else. They can start another show, they can do something else. But when Love Island's on, or when I'm a Celeb's on, that's all you're consumed by. And that's why I think it's fascinating, and why that model of nightly content and that model of constant content that's still got a communal vibe because you all tune in at the same time, I think seems to be the way that linear TV might have to shift. I wouldn't be surprised if you get to a point where a lot of content's produced like that going forward, whether not a majority, but there's more than there are. You're currently, as you say, what have you got now? You've got Love Island, I'm a Celeb, Celebs Go Dating, and The Circle. I think is the 4 that do that. But I could see a big shift into that as programming going forward, if they can afford it. That's always the key.
Yes, and it's more expensive to do it that way, but we've seen how it reaps rewards, and Love Island proved how you can get the sponsorship angle so right as well. They didn't even just flog a dead. They didn't even flog it to the point where it become dead and people don't respond. They got it just right.
Yeah, they nailed it.
And
they nailed it.
You know, sponsors get a payoff for it.
Everyone wins.
The audience actually get benefit and value out.
Yeah,
the
those
sponsors.
bottles are banging. I don't know if you've got one, but they are really good bottles.
Bottles,
those are bottles.
You got the VO5 sponsorship in there.
I saw it first.
I saw it first. Sponsorship was fucking smart because it meant that you could buy anything that they were wearing. Boohoo Man did exactly the same with all the guys.
Pretty Little Thing on the way out. I mean, it's
super smart.
Super smart. And I think, that has to be the way that content's fueled. And what, Love Island's an expensive show. They need the brands to pay for it, and they need the brands to support it. And that's where I think, we're seeing it internally around ad funding programming, and it's called AFPs. And that seems to be a big shift in the way that content's being not only produced but funded. It's all done by brands. It will be in the future all done by brands largely, because it's almost the same model that forced content online to be funded by brands, because the publishers couldn't afford to pay it, to pay for it, and they don't have the inventory necessarily around it. On TV, that's becoming more and more the norm, because commissioners and channels are being squashed for budget. Brands aren't paying as much as they used to. As you'll know brands are dispersing their spend in a much more fine way. So things like AFP become a really interesting solution for brands, where they can say, right, let's creatively get involved in the show, and let's have the back end ads, let's have the front end ads, let's have product placement within it, and let's turn the show into something that is basically branded content.
It's nice. Well, we're running out of time, so I'm going to ask one last question.
Yes.
It's now 7:15. What do you normally do on an evening after work? How do you relax? How do you switch off?
Well, I actually got married this year, of all things. So I'm going to go see my wife and chill and sleep. And
super early to get married.
Yeah, in a sense. I think it's...
You don't know a long time?
Been together for about 2 and a bit years.
Jesus.
Got a baby on the way as well.
Jesus.
So yeah, ticking it off, mate.
Wow.
In January.
God, I hope my girlfriend doesn't listen to that.
Yeah, block this bit out. But yeah, so we're just gonna chill. And
did you meet her through work?
No, we met randomly at a festival, at Outlook Festival in 2016, and had some mutual friends, and we ended up seeing each other afterwards, and sort of evolved from there. But we just kind of fell in sync with what we both wanted, and it just ended up really working amazingly. And
at the same age, both
same age, 21, 22, same age pretty much.
And you live in London?
Yeah, I live together in London in a flat in Highbury.
Okay.
Near Finsbury Park.
And when's the
7th of Jan?
Right.
Yeah.
Do you know the gender?
Yeah, boy.
Little
it's
boy.
Jack's little
Wow.
boy. Yeah.
Another little Arsenal fan. To
Absolutely.
The
Absolutely. Who do you support?
I'm a Liverpool fan,
No,
so
you know what? It's adjacent enough. It's
I've
not too
I've gone from being like the most depressed bloke in the pub to now just being the most
flying.
smug. Just smug.
Just looking around.
Just like the last 10 years, it's just been
Absolutely.
like, yeah, but we did win the Champions League in 2005, and then now just been like, yeah, well, I can't see a team beating us,
No,
which is just very different.
You guys are killing it. It's an amazing. Yeah, I mean, what do you want? What can you say?
Exactly.
It's
We've
insane.
got great players. It's really exciting to watch. It's not even like we're winning dirty. We're just winning great.
Do you think Van Dijk or Messi should have won the PFA Player?
I think Van Dijk. I think the last defender that won an award like that was Cannavaro, and he kind of.
It's Cannavaro.
He changed the game.
Yeah, he's just
a short centre back who won the World Cup and won the Italian league, won the La Liga as well. Like, he redefined the role. If I look at Van Dijk, he's doing exactly the same thing, redefining how we see a centre back who can play football, who can pass it, who can tackle, who can run as fast as any winger in the Premier League. Like, he's completely redefined the role. He's stronger than anyone else. He's quite a good looking guy. So in terms of the brand ability of him, like, he ticks so many boxes. He speaks English.
Completely.
Like, all these little things that make a difference to a footballer's success and brand, he's got.
Yeah.
So I think that, does he deserve it? Potentially. I think he won the Champions League. Messi is,
I didn't realise that he'd had 50 goals in 51 games.
He's got 50 goals. If we talk about anybody else, they'd be a shoo-in to win it. That's the problem. We've become so
complacent,
sanitized,
right? Yeah.
Become so sanitized to the fact that we're dealing with two of the best players ever.
Yeah.
That
we'll miss them when they're gone, mate.
Yeah, 50 goals is just seen as like, it's another part of the course. He scored 50 goals. He won more goals than he played matches. It's just insane. So yeah, I think it's always very difficult to not give it to someone who makes such an impact on a team like Messi or Ronaldo do on most seasons.
Yeah.
But there's no way Liverpool win the matches they do and the Champions League they did last year without a player like Van Dijk. And if we look 2 to 3 seasons ago to what the Liverpool team looked like, and it was not dissimilar to the current team.
Completely.
But we always went, but we haven't got a centre-back who we can rely on.
I remember when Arsenal were looking at him, and I remember that time, and I mean, we were looking at obviously Jurgen Klopp as well. That was quite close. And we were looking at Van Dijk. I remember so many Arsenal fans being like, he's the guy, and we never went for it. Yeah. And now look, and we never went for Jurgen Klopp either.
No, we needed a new goalkeeper, and we needed a centre-back. That was it. And we got both. We spent a lot of money getting both, and we spent a lot of money because we knew, actually, if we just get it right, we can have both of them for the next 10 years, and we never have to worry about it again. And they got it completely right. Exactly the way they got it with Jurgen Klopp. Let's invest in the guy we actually think is going to be the guy. And then it will pay off long term.
Yeah, because Jurgen Klopp wouldn't have been a cheap deal at all. But it's one that, as you say, for the long term future of Liverpool, I mean, you can't put a price on it.
And if we look at it as a branding exercise, if you look at Klopp and Liverpool, it's just the perfect brand fit.
100%.
Van Dijk's the same, really. There's a lot of smart branding that's gone on in Liverpool. And I think the new CEO,
who's
Peter Moore from EA.
Who's the new CEO at Liverpool?
Yeah. Wow. So he came in this last summer, and he embodies the club as well. I think everybody across the whole club has started to we've gone back to where Liverpool as a brand should be. And if I look back to the horror years, like 5-6 years ago, and we were Roy Hodgson and the Gillette brothers. Gillette and Hicks. That was the antithesis of what Liverpool as a football club were.
You've got your spirit back now.
Yeah, we have. We've got a CEO who in Napoli, when a fan gets attacked by Napoli fans and goes to hospital, and he has no family out there and no friends because he went to the game on his own. The CEO goes to the hospital. He finds out on Twitter this guy's been injured and is in hospital, and he goes to hospital and waits with him all night, and then flies him home on the Liverpool plane. Like that.
Yeah,
is what Liverpool's all about.
Absolutely,
it's a family club. It's a club with huge history, and then you've got a manager who is so excited to be a part of that legacy and create his own legacy within an incredibly historic club. And then you've got 100%. Players who actually look like they're enjoying playing football. All those things are beautiful. So yeah,
it's a perfect storm, isn't it?
I spent 4 years of my life podcasting about football, as you can tell. But yeah, mate, it's been a pleasure talking.
Absolutely, mate. It's been so good. Thank you so much for having me on.
I'm not going to keep you from getting home to your wife. It's been a pleasure and a huge inspiration as well. I think people who are listening to this, and we do get some amazing people on, I think, it's really exciting to hear about the journey and the career and what you've got to come. I think
thank you.
I'm really looking forward to kind of working with you on lots of different things. And I think we're very privileged in the media industry to have a lot of talented people, and you're very much one of them.
Oh, mate, same to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Amazing.
If you are listening to this, then there's all sorts of other podcasts that you can listen to in the back catalogue. I couldn't tell you how many because Matt's looking at me and he's not giving me any information at all. 10. He's written 10. I think there's more. Then we've also got a daily vlog. We daily vlog every day on YouTube, LinkedIn, wherever you want to watch it, wherever you want to listen to it. We're there. So do check that out too. And we'll put a podcast out every week, are we? Yeah. Got 3 this week. So I'm busy. I'm busy this week, banking them all up. But yeah, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.